Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Latinista conversation. I'm so excited to have you all here for today's Salary Negotiations 101. We have Cynthia Medina Carson here today with us. She is the CEO of Youre. Cynthia, thank you so much for being here today with us.
I'm so excited, and like all the friendly people online saying hello. It's fun.
Yes, our chat room is off to a fantastic start. I want to welcome you all today by telling you a little bit about what the Latinista is. For some of you who don't know us, we are a national organization. We have chapters in New York, Chicago, Miami, LA, as well as some presence in San Diego. We help women of color and Latinas understand how to get from point A to point B in their career development. Today's topic is really important because it's something that a lot of us had to deal with at some point in our careers. I want to tell you a little bit about Youre, our partners today. This conversation is going to be just that, a two-way street. Cynthia is going to drop a ton of magical gems on you, but I want you to remember that this conversation is to help you out. So please click on the button below that says ask a question. And while you do that, while you start thinking about some things to ask Cynthia, I'm going to tell you about Youre. Youre creates spaces for transparent, informative, and healthy salary conversations. They work with individuals via consultations, webinars, and group workshops when we could do that to develop successful salary and career strategies. And they also offer step-by-step guidance on determining a person's market worth.
Yep.
Right? We always talk about value and worth and understanding. They also work with companies to bring curated workshops and salary conversations to the workplace so that we have a little bit more transparency about what other people are making, because it's only fair. More conversations means less tension, higher retention, and a happier workforce.
Yeah, amen.
I'm so excited. Yeah, right? I'm so excited about this conversation because in my 15 years in corporate America, I had to have many, many difficult conversations about first understanding my worth, first understanding, am I really at market value?
Mm-hmm.
What is my bachelor's degree worth? I went for that certification. Is that worth something? How about all of the learning that I'm doing online and all of the self-assessments that I've created for myself? And so I'm really pumped that you guys are all excited about this conversation. We have over 100 people in the conversation today. Make sure you ask a question. And without further ado, I want to introduce Cynthia Medina Carson, the CEO of Youre, and we're going to get right down to it. Cynthia.
We are. So first, I want to thank you so much for having me. The work that you do is so important. I think amongst all of us, we have almost at this point with the education and information, we have the ability and network to actually know everything we need to know. Now we have to share amongst ourselves and then do action, right? And so today will be an action piece of how to think about salary in a way that a lot of us are uncomfortable or don't think about it. So I'm going to go into my presentation. There's basically we're going to talk about 4 things, and then I'm going to give you examples, and then I want to open it up into conversation, because what I find is the minute we start doing this, it bubbles up to the surface stuff they've always wanted to talk about. So Let me get to it, give you as much as possible, and I won't go too fast. I tend to talk fast. I will slow down. Once the presentation is up, though, I will not see if people ask me a question. So if you want to say, hey, interrupt me,
Absolutely.
Be like, oh, this is a good one, or hey, wait till the end, okay?
Yep.
So I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start. And I'll wait for, okay. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. And let me know if I'm good to go. Yeah.
You are good to go. I am minimizing my camera as well as yours, and we see your presentation. It looks beautiful. Salary 101.
Woohoo! Okay, so let's get you paid more. And we're going to talk a lot about the details of how just an average, every time you go to negotiations, do these things. And by the end, we're going to talk about examples of what it looked like actually in real life and people I work with. We'll talk in detail, but let's get going. Why should you listen to me? Who am I? So my name is Cynthia Medina Carson. I'm the CEO of Youre. For some of you, might be similar. I'm first generation in my family to go to college, first to own a passport, first to do many things outside of a small group of Puerto Ricans in Western Massachusetts. My family's from Puerto Rico. So I went to Georgetown University, and in my whole life, I think I've always wanted to serve. I got a CHCI fellowship, which meant that I spent a year in DC thinking, all right, I graduated from college, I'm ready to serve. And the minute I got to DC, I realized that that wasn't how I was going to do it. Something about that didn't kind of click right with me. So I was always looking for where my place would be in the life to work and help others. I joined the Peace Corps. I was Peace Corps Nicaragua, and where I was a small business development working on micro lending. That meant I had 50 women, I gave $100 loans, and I had to help them develop a small business for themselves, for to be sustainable and to maybe walk away from bad marriages, bad situations, and do well for their family. This all led me to go to Harvard University to get a master's, again, in international affairs. I thought this whole time, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work women, Latin America. This is, I was kind of formulating who I would be. But then 9/11 happened, and right in the middle of my studies, I was like, wow, I felt like there was a new calling for my services, where the industry, wherever the world went different place than I had thought. So instead of international affairs, I focused on international, like money laundering and financing, like looking at the money piece, international piece, and how to serve my country in that way. So everything went great, did that for many years, got into executive position, went to JP Morgan to work on anti-money laundering strategy, VP, like I did this whole thing. And I'm like, okay, I'm making my 6 figures. Life is great. I have everything I need. And then the recession. And a little bit about that, I think will creep into today's conversation. A lot of us may be looking for our next job, maybe in the middle salary negotiations. And you're like, but a pandemic, like, how do I dare ask for more now? I should just take what what I'm offered. So for me, there was a moment of reflection, like, I've done all this all my life to get to here, and I have no idea what I'm doing next. We moved to San Francisco at the time, and my husband's big in startups, and I realized, okay, I have a people skills, negotiation skills, and like diplomatic skills that I use throughout my life. I started working as a recruiter, working with startups. Like, again, I was always startups and women and, this micro lending. I did it for small startups, and it became bigger. And then I became kind of I figured out my craft and how to help people get jobs, how to work in a really large, fast setting, and how to kind of do this for myself. But this is one thing I found, and this is where it gets me to Wager and where we are today. It was as a public policy person, I'm always making sure that the world is set up for us to all win, not just some. And what I saw in front of me was, especially during negotiations, especially during the job offers, the person across, there's no way that person was ever going to get as much as they could. There was insecurity. If there's a woman, there was definitely like holding back, or people just needed jobs. And I basically had all the cards as the recruiter, as the HR person on one side, and the person across from me there was just no way they were going to win in the situation. There was lack of transparency. There was lack of information, kind of symbiotic. There was no relationship. That was no equal footing. So I started Wager because I felt like I wanted to create a space, a way for us, first of all, individuals to figure out how to have these conversations, figure out how to ask for more, but also change the culture of companies to create that transparency. You're going to, in the future, there's not a lot of stuff holding individuals to companies anymore. It's not like a longevity. It doesn't mean no one can promise you 5 to 10 years of work anymore. So what is it going to hold us together in terms of, a work situation? We need honesty and transparency. And so that's really why I launched Wager. And what we do in it, we do salary negotiations. I teach individuals how to do that, how to even start talking about it, because I know it's hard for some people. We also want to bring this to the workforce, because I think it's very important that companies start creating a transparent situation, so we don't always have to do the work bottom up. It should come top down. And we're also started creating salary kind of sharing sheets and information amongst networks. Like, if you have a network of 50 to 100 people and you want to start sharing information amongst yourselves, kind of curating that content that's valuable to you. So I've been doing this for the past few years. It's been a fantastic ride, and I think I'm going to bring you the basics, the bare bones of what I teach some people, and then some examples of past few weeks of my work. So here it is. Take a deep breath. Salary negotiations 101. 4 things we're going to talk about. 1, and as I mentioned, knowing your worth and what that actually means in the workforce. 2, know your value. Like, okay, I know now that job worth over here is worth $75K to $90K. who am I in that? Am I at the bottom, at the top? What am I bringing to the table so I get that job and I get it at the right price for me and what I bring? Know your words. You could do all the research in the universe and you can actually know exactly what you bring to the table. But if you can't speak the words and you can't advocate for yourself, you're not going to have it. And then the last, and this is really simple, and I'll say 1, 2, 3 is all like the 1, 2, 3 you do. But the fourth, practice and having a minimum, this is where people fall apart and this is where people lose. They don't practice it. They think they know, and then they get in that situation and they just back down and then walk away and say, yes, whatever you want. And sometimes it'll go under their minimum. So let's talk about strategies to prevent that. Okay. The number one, knowing your worth. And I mentioned, she's like, I have certificates. I have all these things, right? So when we're talking about your job worth, way to think about it is that every job posting, everything you see on the internet or someone, emails you a job, that has a worth. Somebody created a budget for that job. And what your job is, what you need to do is figure out what that range is and how I fall in that, right? So you start thinking about, all right, am I 3 months into something of the skills it needs? Or have I been doing it for like 5 years? Have I been doing it for 10 years? I could do it in my sleep. Your experience, I did this for a small startup or I've done it for a large multinational. And the critical part, and I think this is really key, is are you one of 300 people who do something, or are you one of like 1 or 2 people who they need so badly that they will pay you anything? So when you think about the worth of this job, how badly is what you bring, what this job has a worth, it has a value, it has a market worth. This is not about you. It's just the market, right? In DC, the same job could be 65K. New York City, maybe it averages 90K. So it's just the market worth and what people will pay for that job. But the pieces that you want to start thinking about is how critical what you bring to the table to that. And that is how you start going, instead of just like base minimum, what they offer, to getting a little more. All right, so how do you figure this out? Now, again, these are really the basics, 101. We can get trickier as you get up in, when you start thinking about, equity and shares of company, all that. But let's just say you have a job, maybe it's a base and bonus, something very simple. You're gonna do the basic research, right? And there's websites people use, PayScale, salary.com, LinkedIn, Glassdoor. All of these have plus and minuses. I'll say PayScale tends to be one people use because I believe it's HR kind of company data that's shared with this company. And some of it, like Glassdoor, we know that it's just people sending in information. The purpose of this is to get kind of like a space, like this is it, I know a range, right? It's not when you walk in, I know exactly what you're going to pay me. It's just make sure that you walk in, you have a good sense of what it is. So you're going to put your title, you're going to put the location is very important, and some details, and you'll get some 3 or 4 jobs that would look like yours. You're like, okay, I see. That's the kind of range that I'm looking at for this job. I would say the next level, if you want to do a little more pro level, a lot of us are members of very specific niche groups, right? You could be the Latinista might have its own group. I know there's Facebook groups for writers, hourly employees in the writing world, or I know traveling nurses have a Facebook page, right? There's a lot of groups within themselves that you can actually, I feel like, is more intimate space for you to start asking these questions. And in the groups, you can say, and similar when we talk to our peers in the industry, it's not about asking people directly what they make. It is about finding spaces where you have shared industry and thoughts, and you're like, hey, so I'm moving to the new area. I'm moving from Kansas to California, LA area, and I'm going to be looking to work in marketing space for a large company. It's going to be larger than the one I did now, and they're offering around this range is what I'm looking at. Is that the right range? So your goal is to start creating avenues to ask people or find information. Or am I in the right range? Am I, what does this look like? Am I at 85K? Is this 110K? It's really just trying to pare down the information so you can walk in comfortably, so that for a fact, like after all this research, that most jobs in LA for your expertise range from 75 or 100 or 75 to 90. And and so if someone comes up to you and says, yeah, we're going to offer 60, you're like, no. So it's really just getting you situating in a place where you get comfortable, like, hey, this is what I can make. And of course, for me, the ultimate is being able to create a network of people who are your peers and your industry peers, where again, you can have that coffee or now your Zoom and say, hey, so it looks like I might be getting a job offer. It's in this range. Is that about right? I know that you used to do that as well. And, this is a few years ago for you, but have you seen this as well? Again, just creating a dialogue where you're not fearful of money, you're not fearful to ask, and you're not asking people, hey, how much you make? Although I love when people do that. I think it's fantastic. And I love talking to people and connecting people. That's we just started by me connecting people to have salary conversations. So for me, the salary conversations, the ultimate for a few reasons. Basically, it just kind of takes all the emotion out and just gets down to numbers. But you can do it in a soft way, right? And if you don't want to do your actual coworkers, you can do former coworkers. And I have lots of examples of people who've had to do this, really fight for themselves amongst their coworkers. All right, so this is just as step 101, doing your basic research, researching, talking as much as you can to get kind of just that framework of how much you can make. Now, this is going to be the important part. Say this value of this job that you're going for, you found out it's really 75 to 90. How do you, as an individual, push yourself to the upper piece of that? And how do you get yourself ready to fight for yourself and say, actually, you came in at 72. I'm actually really on the 90K range, given what I've seen. So let's start doing something. I want you to take a very data set based approach to this. It's not about how you feel about it. On happiness, it's like, all right, I'm going to create value statements, and I'm going to prepare myself to defend all I can bring to the table to this company, right? So, and I know AAUW does this. A bunch of organizations work with this basic model, but this is really good for people who are uncomfortable or just not used to kind of bringing up the amazingness that they are. I accomplished this, right? And I use X skills. And that by using those two, I was able to do this for my company, right? And so the whole point of this is, what did I do? How did I do it? And how did I end up helping my company because of that? And in turn, really, it's about the person you're applying for. Why do I say this? Oftentimes, we create value statements about how amazing we are, or I did this, this, and this. But the point is not about you. How do you show them that you're going to do it for them? They have a problem and you are the biggest problem solver. You're the best problem solver for that job, and you want to get paid the most because you're like going to solve it in like 6 months. Someone else would take 2 years, right? So what did I do? How did I do it? And how did I help my employer? And all this is about creating data. So the first piece of data is out there in the universe collecting. All right, I feel pretty comfortable. I got it. My friends tell me I got it. This is all right. Now I'm going to show them that I not only deserve that, I deserve the high end of wherever I'm going because I'm great. So a simple value statement and what I want. Actually, and I tell people to bring 3 or 4 in to their salary conversations and kind of have them in front of them, not just as a crutch. What you'll see is if you internalize it and once you practice, you don't really need that. But it's good to have in front of you so just in case you stumble and someone says, yeah, but I don't know. You're like, well, actually. So for me, I could do something like, say I wanted to work a very large organization and they have 10,000 members or 5,000 members. Well, so I worked last year with 250 people in 2019. I used my research and coaching and leadership skills, and I was able to increase my average clients now make 25% more in salary through my coaching conversations. Something really simple. And I know I would love if she can, something very simple as well, like, give me, what did you accomplish, what you use, and, how did somebody benefit from that?
Yeah, I love this mission statement. This is fantastic. So I'm going to pretend that I'm applying for a job. So okay. I accomplished developing a program or a structure to help our marketing strategy. Let's see. I used my marketing community and communication skills. I benefited the company by saving $50,000, right. Transitioning them from a program that we didn't need to now building a better process.
I mean, amazing. I mean, I know it sounds simple, but if you said that 4 times in a row and they're like, yeah, but, and then you said this, yeah, but, and then you said like, and you cannot refute when you bring data to a company. They want, if anything, they want you to succeed. It's not like they don't want you they want you the best person possible for what their problem is. And so if you told me that you just saved $50,000 and you could do it again for me, but maybe even more, I would hire you. And something that I've been worried about, maybe that's what I've been worried about. I'm worried about losing money. I'm worried that we're inefficient. And you're going to know going in, wow, I know they're worried about these 3 things. I'm going to create value statements, 3 or 4 statements because I know these are the things they're worried. I'm going to give them the 4 things to show them if they hire me, they don't have to worry. Okay, so
actually, if you can go back one more, I was
Yeah.
asking if you could show that last slide, one more behind this one. Let's see that one. Yep. So there's the example of the value statement for EMVSing. That's wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank
and one thing, often what I work with people is, especially if you have a skill, or if your job feels like it doesn't have data or numbers behind it, it's really about creating numbers around what you do, and not necessarily numbers, but accomplishments. Because someone will say, well, I'm just, I'm just a secretary, or executive assistant, and I'm like, no, think about all that you've done. Like, there's so much, like you every day. What are all the things you did? How did you make people feel? How did you make things more efficient? There's ways to put numbers around what you do and show that value to another job, transferable.
I mean, especially with executive assistants, you can say 75 flights, I gathered 500 people for 15 meetings, on a bi-weekly basis.
And yeah, I mean, and I think that's what, so when I show that sometimes people hesitate, I'm like, no. And then we work through, like, okay, you're right. Yes, I've done a lot. And that's the part of getting out from under yourself, like putting yourself out there and be like, listen, I brought a lot to it, and I'm just going to figure out the words for that. Yeah. So knowing your words. All right. So say, and this is, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, we'll be done soon, so we can start the conversation is, all right, so you did all your research. You have your facts to show you not only you've done your research of what people pay for this job, you know what you bring to the table because you've mastered these skills, and you're going to show them how they benefit other people. Now, how do you make sure, and this is going to be the tricky part, how do you make sure that you have an offer? Someone offered you a job. I'm going to say one thing before we start this section. The biggest fear people have about negotiations is that someone's going to take their job offer away. They fear that if I push a little back, they're going to be like, oh yeah, this person's difficult, and walk away. I just want you to know that in the thousands of times that I've worked with people, it's never happened. I think that's happened literally one time, and I hate that it happened one time because I like saying it's never happened. But one time that people just not able to handle the fact that she was so put together, they were almost worried. So, but I say that's never happens. And this is why it doesn't happen. So I have a slide when I do this, like a full day long workshop. And one of them is, what is the average amount of people that apply for a corporate job? It might be 250 people. I mean, at minimum. So say you have a job, 250 people. Of those, 4 to 6 people come in to see managers because everyone's really busy, and you cram people into a couple days, a bunch of calls. It's really chaotic. And then from that, only one person gets a job. I'm going to tell you the amount of energy and money that people have paid and time to get you to that door, to make that job offer. Nobody wants to do that again. Like at all. It's exhausting. It's like the thought of someone losing someone for $3,000 to $5,000 just because they didn't ask and I didn't know and they got a better offer is it would be worst case scenario. So know that once a person gets you in the door and once they made an offer, nobody wants to do this again. It's demoralizing. So you're in a fantastic place to make sure you take a moment and breathe and not say yes. So I am excited about this opportunity. Thank you so much. This is so great. Give me a moment to look over this offer. Can we schedule? So it's today's Wednesday. Can we talk again Friday? They might get anxious, be like, can we? And say, Thursday? I'm like, okay, maybe tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow after work. I just want time to look at this. I want to maybe match up my benefit. I just want to match things up. So, and I may have more questions for you. You should always do this. Please try not to say yes. And I feel bad every time I do the presentation, someone says, oh, I said yes fast. I know, it's okay. It's about learning and then not doing it next time. It's totally fine. So take a moment, breathe. No one's going to take it away from you, and give yourself time. Then you're going to go through all your stuff. See if they say, okay, they came in at 73. We've already done the analysis at 75 to 85, and at the high end, maybe 90. So you're like, I'm going to go back and think about this. Now you come back the next day, paused and ready with all your scripts, knowing what you're going to say, and practice with your friends. Thank you so much for this. So based on my research, I know these are the 3 things that are big on your plate that you really want to fix. Based on my research and basically the skill set that I bring, I believe I'm more in the 85 to 90K range. Given I brought, $50,000 savings to my company. I've been doing this 6 years, your minimum 3 years. Again, put all your statements out there. They're like, well, I'm not sure. I think, and usually immediately you'll see this happens 75% of the time. I can give you at least to 80, like off the bat. Off the bat, you most, I won't say always, often I will see people just off the bat, there is a wiggle room that they've been given to give you at least some. You're like, okay, great, this is great. Let me just take a second. And this is when you want to get firm. And I'll say this is when people fall off and get scared and uncomfortable. They'll say, okay, fine, right? But no, you did your research. You figured out where you are on the spectrum of getting paid and your services and what you have to offer. So take a moment and make it uncomfortable just for 10 minutes. That's all I'm saying. You did so much work. Do this. Now it's the time for you to shine a little bit. So I did my research. I gave a number. They said, well, I can get you to 80. You really want to get to 85. You're like, well, is that number flexible at all? Again, these are all the things that I've done, and this is all the stuff that I can do for you. Is it flexible at all? Again, you're being kind, you're being easy. You're just saying, I have all this data. I know what to bring to the table. What can you do? And oftentimes if a person says, listen, if you can get me to 82 right now, I'll take the job. Right. And that's a little bold. So you better be ready for that. And they might say no. But this, I think I want to set up the 1, 2, 3. You took a pause, you gave your number. They gave you a number. You're like, okay, based on my research, they say maybe didn't give it to you. Is that number flexible at all? You're like, all right. And then you're like, okay, can we do this? And this is the other people ask me, like, let's say they really, really can't give it to you. Maybe like, listen, we have budgeted this, money's tight this year, there's not a lot going, we're going to actually, if anything, you're going to get more than anyone else. I really can't get you to like the 85. All right. I totally understand this. And that happens a lot. And I love when companies are honest. They're like, I want to give you more. You're awesome. I can't. We got a budget, and that's just, everyone starts it the same way. Or we can revisit this maybe after bonus, after, our numbers. Right now, this is what you can give you. And that is fine. You've done I did my research. I asked you for flexibility. And now there's an answer. There's 3 times you're like, okay, now there's a true answer, and you make your decision. If you can try and do the 3, like 1, 2, 3, try, and then you make a decision, and that's it. So people say, okay, so how about if it's under what I want? And I was like, all right, is there a strategic reason for you to take this job? Like, can they give you, there's 1,000 reasons why you need to take it. You're about to work with really wonderful people. Like, there's opportunities. Of course, yeah. I'm not saying, then you should consider like, okay, is this above my minimum? Can I do this for a year? Will it give me a bunch of other stuff? Then yes. But I do want you to have the conversation. So you can't give me this year. In 6 months, can we revisit the salary? I want to show you all I can do. I want to show you that I'm an asset. I really feel like I'm in this space. How about in 6 months, or when review comes, I hope that we can revisit this. Is this something you can promise me? Is this something we can talk about in the future? Almost always they'll say yes. All companies will be like, okay, of course. But I'm going to give you a little caveat to this piece. When they say yes, you want to go back once a quarter and remind them of what you talked about. Because what'll usually sometimes happen if people aren't mindful, they promised, they said yes, they moved on, and everybody moved on, and nobody ever went back to the fact that you asked for that salary. So now you will have to do your piece. In 3 months, be like, hey, this is how I'm doing. How am I doing? What do you think? Great. 6 months. Hey, remember we had the conversation? How am I doing? Everything good? Thanks. Great. And then when it comes around to your, evaluation, you're like, remember, we talked about this. These are all the things I've done. This is where I feel like I should be. Okay. So that's a lot on this. And this is a lot of, this could be a 3 days worth of conversations when it comes to this, the know your words. Depending if they say this, what do you say if they say this? But it really is about holding firm. If you've done all your research, then you shouldn't have any fear about having these conversations. If the person's really, really kind of aggressive about no, almost like take a step back, it makes you take a step back. You also want to know, what kind of place am I working for that does not allow for a conversation like this? Like, this is not about emotional based conversation. There's data, this job has a worth, and I bring my worth, and then we talk about that worth, and that's it. And then I move on. Anything about that before I move on? I know we'll probably talk about words in a little bit. The fourth piece to this is really important. And I'll say these are the 2 areas that I'll say no matter what I've done, no matter what's happened, if you don't practice and you had to have a minimum, this is where people may fall back. And the practice looks like this. And I practice with people often before they go into negotiations. And I say to them, all right, tell me, I got under offer. Hey, great. Listen, I'll give you 75. What do you think? And the person's supposed to practice with me that they really want 90. And I make them walk through it. What I notice is people at first will be like a little shy, a little shaky. Then the second time, a little more. By the fourth time, my whole goal is not to get them to memorize the words. It's to get them to take in and like take on that value. Like that is a real value, and you have to believe in it. And when you walk into negotiations, you got to believe in yourself and what you bring. And women tend to, and Latinas, and I've worked with a lot of Latinas, I get kind of like frustrated that they don't own the value. And I'm like, no, you're not walking away from this conversation until I know you feel that you're really worth what you're saying you are. Because if you don't do it with me, you're not going to do it with that person. And I think that is a key. Like you got to own what you're really bringing to the table. And we don't often do that. The other piece is having a minimum. And I think that is really key because, again, with the practice, if you have a minimum in your head, you are not allowed to go under that. I know that during this recession time and COVID and pandemic, this is what my biggest fear right now over the next 6 months to a year is we are getting to a good place where we're having these conversations, where we're sharing information. People are starting to figure out how to get network and get, what they deserve. And yeah, you gave great examples at the cafecito you had a few months ago, like of how to like make, being okay with talking about it with people. So we're at that place. My fear is all of a sudden we're going to start taking jobs at whatever and not just going through this very simple process. Like 1, research, 2, what do I bring to the table for this job? Here are my words, holding firm, 1, 2, 3, trying 3 times, and then, okay, letting go. That whole thing, when you've been out of a job or there's not a lot of jobs, I feel like that is when we lose. And we'll say, sure, yes, good, I'll take it, I'm leaving. There's ways to do this in very simple ways. And as you practice over time, what's important is you do this now and you will never not do it. And I think it's really creating a habit. Every time you get a job offer, you do these things. Next job offer, you do these things. And then it'll just become a habit. You know that there's a way to do this. So I'm going to give you 2 examples that I've done over the past couple of weeks with two women of color. And one's a little different. One's high, one makes a lot of money. The other person makes less money, but I think they're good examples. So there's a prominent Latina in our network. She's wonderful and fantastic. She's worked for, let's say, a very large Facebook kind of startup in Silicon Valley. So it's not normal, it's not a startup, make a lot of money, they do well, she gets a salary and a bonus. She's sick. She wants to move so she makes about 320 all in, which is a lot. But she's also been doing a long time. If anything, when I saw that number, given what she does, she actually should be making more. She wants to take a strategic move to a startup because she's like, you know what? I do all this work for startups. I want to go to a startup and like have the upswing that all these people always have. Like I keep hearing about all these, and I'm not part of that because I do the safe thing where I get the job and I get my salary, make a bonus. I want a percentage. I want equity. So we said, all right, what's the pie in the sky? What's like the craziest thing we could get out of this? If you could move into this new job, the startup, it's a well-founded startup, what would you ask? So we mapped it out. Like it was almost ridiculous. $275, basically it's her salary. And with equity, she could make so much given the details of this job. So we pushed and and she held, and I'm going to tell you the way we did it was she did exactly, literally what we're doing right now. She held firm, and the key to her she ended up with $300K and equity, which was really fantastic. The key to her though was what she does was so strategically important to the company, and she knew it. So we focused on the fact that she was only one of few people that if she went to them, she could do this, and that really was the game changer. They went up as high as they can because they knew they needed her. Let's get to a point where we are so needed that people will pay us our worth. Now, this is much more in the education space. So there's a woman of color that I was working with, and she is a registrar for a well-known university, but it's a private one, right? She has probably 5,000 students, even less. She's making 80K. She wants to make at least 85 to her new transition. But she knows that she's going from private university to a community college. So she's like, well, can I expect them to pay me more? I was like, actually, you're going from, and she realized she's going from 500 whatever students to 8,000. So she's about to triple her 4 times her work. She also knew that there's a few things that the board's concerned with. And this goes back to finding what is the problem, how can I solve it specifically, and this, how I can get the higher end of the pay range. They're concerned with enrollment. Numbers are dropping, and they have a diversity issue. As this woman of color, she's worked on both at her previous current position. So she's like, I know I have these strategic things to offer. I know that I just want 85. I don't want to do a lateral move for something that's going to require 3 times my amount of work. So we practiced, and I pretended that I was a president. I would pretend that the HR, and she was really shaky. She kept not owning that. I was like, you are about to do something for them that they need. You're not asking for that much, and you need to hold firm about what the market worth is. The market worth for this job tends to be 85 to 90. We did the research. She ended up with 87K. But the way she did it, she said, okay, I was shaky at first. And they said, well, we can get you up to 83. And that's all we can do. And for us to do over that, we'd have to go to 80. It was 85, I believe. She didn't say her number. We can only get you 85. She wanted anywhere between 85 and 90. And she said, well, the HR said, the only way we can get you there is we speak to the president. And she said, okay, I understand. So definitely go speak to the president. And I look forward to, what happens. So she came back great. But she says that at that moment, she wanted to just say yes with the 85. But she says, I just held on saying, all right, 10 minutes of awkwardness, go speak to the president. They came back, they gave it, and that was that. And she says never in her life has she felt more empowered than holding firm for that really awkward moment. So it was just a few minutes of awkwardness, and she got through it, and it was fine. Now, it's all not always this amazing for people, but it really actually is. For the most part, people have a little wiggle room off the bat they can give you. It's if you do more homework or your strategic position where you have to offer more to offer, you can kind of start negotiating for real. So that is what Wagers. This is what we do. And we'll go to questions now, but we do a lot of the salary consultations. We do resume stuff, career stuff, and we connect people to have salary conversations. I'm gonna unshare my space now. But I have we can talk about this in Lindsay, if you can put it up in the notes. 20% discount on the stuff that we do. We do a lot. You can go on our website. We do a lot of webinars. And I believe we have one coming June 2nd, maybe Lindsay as well, if you could put that up if people want to hear more about this. I believe it's a resume, but Lindsay will remind me. We have one coming up on June 2nd, a little discount. That one's free and discount on our stuff. All right. I hope I talked really, really fast. Let's see if we can get out of sharing.
That's fantastic. So I've got you. Oh yeah, there she goes. Lindsay says Latina 20 is the code. Thank you so much, Cynthia. We actually have quite a few questions. And for those of you who are in the chat, please click on the button where it says ask a question. There are so many things that we can talk about that you mentioned. One thing that really stuck out to me that I've experienced in the past is the fact that I think, it's my opinion, that it's easier to negotiate with someone in HR and negotiating with your already existing boss 3-6 months from now. The relationship and rapport, and they really know what you're worth at that point.
Yes.
But when you're having the conversation with HR, do you feel like it's a little bit more interesting because you're working on just getting your foot in the door and impressing them right off the bat? They really haven't seen you work.
So working with HR is easier. Well, remember, sometimes HR have 50 to 60 job recs you're filling, right? So if they love you enough and your manager loves you enough, they just want you getting in the door. And this is why I say when you negotiate with them, you're like, hey, there's a give and take. If you feel they're going to do the best job possible to get you off the books. So ask them anything they don't like. It's not, they're going to try and they don't have the budget. It's not their budget, right? So it's a manager's budget. So they do have to go back to the manager, and then it's a little harder. And then you do work. So when I mentioned that people tend to, if you take something lower and you say, hey, I want to prove myself, and we get to that point, the job will be on the individual to consistently remind the manager what they're doing. And I'll say we have a whole career management webinar. The biggest, so when I worked at Spotify and Black ERGs and different ERGs, and I'll say the comment from ERGs, especially people of color ERGs, employment resource groups in companies, is that they're not seen and that they're passed up often and all that stuff. So the salary conversation and making an organized way of getting your raise and organized way of getting salary is a stepping stone to you generally in your life constantly making sure you're seen. So, right. So you come in now, but that thing that you just did where you talked and showed, now you have to do that in your job. Every quarterly, hi, I see, this is what I'm doing. How's it going? 3 months later, hi, I see, but hey, remember now I've been showing all year, I want my raise. And I think this is a piece that we get in the door and then sometimes we disappear, right? And that there's just self-job management, this is all part of this confidence stuff. So,
yeah, I love that. No, that's fantastic. It's all about being seen. And I think that people often forget to do a self-assessment or write down a lot of what they've accomplished throughout the months. I've spoken to many Latinistas on this chat that a year goes by, and your assessment is up for review and they get really bummed because they didn't get that salary increase. And now your next opportunity is literally in a year. That's
horrible,
a bad position to be in.
Right.
And then 10 years goes by and you're like, how am I still at 85,000?
Right. And a big tag to this, a big important piece is once you're in the door, ongoing career management in like a vicious way. Like you have to make it a priority once a year to get more, period.
Yes.
Once a year, right? Even, and if they say no, know why they say no. And if they give you reasons, tell me the reasons. And every 3 months, I'm going to show you how those reasons don't match up anymore. And, and then when you come to that thing, it's the end of the year and it's the review and your job opportunity to get more, and you don't get it. That is your answer. That is your 1, 2, 3. And they said no. And now you make a decision. And I think this is what happens is we stay. We always stay. We overstay. And we're not welcome. And we're welcome because we're cheap and we're good and we're humble, but we're not moving forward. And this is, I want to advocate more people leaving. Maybe right. I know now is a nervous time, but in general, we need to start advocating us being able to walk away if people don't pay our worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's okay, like you mentioned, to walk away from some of the opportunities that are being shared. And I love the fact that you brought up that statement that says, if you give me 120, I will take the opportunity today and we can get through this process.
I know. Imagine. And you know what? People are like, oh, okay, let me go see. Because I want to be done and everybody wants you to go work. So in general, everyone wants you to show up on Monday and start working. Nobody wants to delay this. It's exhausting. Yeah. So you have an opportunity and we never take it off. We don't take it enough to kind of make a statement. That's in a simple way that, by the way, everyone does. Everyone in front of me has always asked for more. And there's a group that asks for more and the group that doesn't ask for more. Women don't ask for more, or if they ask a little and I say no, they stop. I'm like, no, you can fight. So some people are so there. I've had a few really annoying people and I'm like, here, just take 10,000 and never come to me again. And they like, but they made money and they're like, they don't care. That was 10 minutes of awkwardness. Everyone moved on. Nobody remembered. It's that sense of being awkward for a little bit that is helpful for people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we have a few questions.
Okay.
The first one is, how do you set yourself up to not be the first one to give the range in salary negotiations?
Right. So they'll say, so what, how much you want to make or something, right? And you're like, oh, well, I don't know enough about this job. I don't know how many reports or I don't know the intricacies. Like, it's going to be really hard for me to give you a range if I don't know. Am I traveling 7 nights a week? So why don't we talk? I need to understand the details of it or what you have to offer and see what I'm going to bring. And then we can talk about a number. But it's true. Like, how would somebody walk in before knowing, like if someone's like, all right, I'm going to, cook a meal for you. You're like, okay, great. Love it. You're like, well, is it 20 people? Is it 50 people? Do you like spicy, not spicy? So do the same thing for a job. Like I would love to, I want to, yeah. But when the time comes, I'll tell you, but I don't know enough about this job. So let me know more about the job and let's see if it works for both of us. Part of this is we also have to start owning that we're about to give 8 to 10 hours of our day to a place. Like, this also is our life, and our life has value. And so say, hey, I want to make sure this works for both of us. And I want more of us to get to that point where it's just both of us. So you tell me what's happening, I'll tell you, and then we'll get to a place. And if I want to work here, then we're going to figure, we can make this happen.
Yeah, I love that. When I started a corporate career about 10 years ago, I actually called up. I asked the person who was hiring me if it was okay for me to communicate with the individual that had just left. They were amicable. She said that she had just left for another opportunity. And so I said, is it okay if I reach out to her?
Amazing.
And they're like, Sure. So they gave me her information and I said, hey, they're offering me this amount.
That's
You
amazing.
probably have different experiences, but is that around the range of how much you were making doing this
Fantastic.
exact job that I'm about to
Right.
take?
Right.
And she was
And
very transparent for me. She told me
right.
she had nothing to lose. She had gone to another
Right.
company. She was making more money. And she said, this is what I made. Don't make any less. This is exactly the job that you're going to be doing, and ask as many questions as you can. I was like,
Great.
okay.
Yeah, you will be one of my examples now. Okay. That's
Yeah,
good.
it was so great. She's still a really good friend until this day.
Well, and I think what you did is very key. People actually there are people who don't mind sharing. And it's not about how much but like, hey, is this about right? And who doesn't want to help a person if
Absolutely.
if all things are aligned? I'd love to help someone make more. Or I'd love to help someone, I don't know, it's not my problem. I'm leaving, I'm gone.
Sure. And you don't want to ever see someone getting underpaid, especially if it's a woman or a woman of color or anyone.
No. There's some answers, some questions I want to make sure now many positions, does this affect the amount an org will want to pay? So is that you? You asked that, like, okay. So this is important to me because I have been making women and people move away from working in one home a day a week, whatever, as to lower their salary. I feel like you come in, there's a job you're going to do, that job has a market worth, and you're going to do the job. And I have people like, well, do I talk about home? And I was like, nope, you're going to do the job. And they're going to hire you. They know you're going to do the job. Don't worry about it. Don't even go there.
It doesn't matter how many days you're going into the office.
No. I mean, the reason I do that is because what tends to be women who do that. And we suppress our salary for no reason. We just off the bat offer less because I want to do work from home. And I'm advocating to stop, get the salary, and maybe a month or two in, be like, all right, so I'm going to be working from home once a month, once a week, or like, or find out the culture if that happens. If it happens in the culture, just don't ask about it. Like if you know that's things people do, like Nielsen's of a large company, everybody works from home on Friday. It's not even a thing. Don't talk about it. Like, why, so to get a sense of the culture as well. If a lot of people are doing it, don't include that. Don't even start the conversation.
Yeah, that's a great thing. The next question is, can you talk about salary transparency? For example, when a job posting does not list the salary range and ways to adopt a salary transparent culture in a company or an organization.
Yeah, so most companies, there's some that are I'll say larger traditional companies won't be so transparent, right? And you'll see some that are super amazingly transparent, but I'll say that's 5%, maybe 5 to 10%. There's a 20 to 30% of people who will give now, who are starting to 20% who are giving ranges in the job, like levels, right? And Google has levels, people have levels. So every couple of years you can be in a certain level. So there's like completely black box. There's some transparency, and some people are like, this is a job range and this is what I got. It's really like I'm trying to do it from the top down, like let's advocating that the next generation of workers are going to need more transparency. The next generation of workers who have had iPhones, who've had they have been talking about what they ate, where they go, where they drink all their life. And all of a sudden they get to the workforce and nobody talks about salary. And like, wait, but this is like a total basic. Like, this is like, I talk about all these other things. Why wouldn't I talk about this? So I do think inherently more people are going to have to be more transparent. Companies are going to have to require it. And I think ideally we just have a push. The way the push I've been seeing, and I don't know if you've seen, so many people are sharing online. They're creating salary, like Google has salary, and museums and all the use, last year there was about 20, 30 articles on people just creating transparency themselves. I would implore a company to start adopting those processes themselves, because people are going to do it anyway. And people aren't going to care. There's no shame anymore in money. And I appreciate that. So it's going to be driven by the individuals.
I love that. Salary and money shouldn't be taboo anymore. You should feel comfortable getting to know your coworkers and saying, hey, this is my experience. I'm making this amount. Is this what you guys mean as well? We're all in this together. Yeah. We don't want anyone to ever be $50,000 less than what we're all making.
Well, there's a woman that worked at WeWork who found out that her coworkers were all making more than her and she had more experience. And so she had to bring that to the conversation. And it was actually hard. And there was a little bit of retaliation, and she had to sort that out, and she ended up getting it. But what that did was leave her with a bad taste in her mouth, and she ended up leaving. So this is part of the story, is like, You can be that way and you can try and screw people over a little bit, but in the big picture, this won't survive, right?
Wow.
There's just way too much information out there for people to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a similar question. What if your current company is very conservative and doesn't allow for numbers, stats to be shared outside of the organization? Even sharing that type of information internally is a struggle.
It is a struggle, and so if you're a person who's much more like liberal about money or about these conversations, and you have a very conservative organization, one thing is it's legal for you to talk about salaries. It's a part of collective bargaining, the 1935 Wagner Act, and recently, 2014 Obama. You can allow to share salaries amongst your coworkers. There's no way to prevent you from that. I'm not saying, and this is a key part, I'm not saying people won't retaliate as like, oh, is this a person who's, but you're gonna, and I'm gonna ask some of you, and this is not easy, especially if we're women of color, we're gonna have to lead the train like we always do, and know our rights. And if you have a right, you can do that. And is this the place you want to be? Where we need to start saying that maybe this is not for me. We need to do what we need to do and not be fearful to get another job. If we're good, it all starts with being good, right? So you got to be an A player. The more A player you are, the more you can play like this, right? So if you're a player, this is not you, you're kind of whatever, you're not going to be in a good position. If you're an A player and you do the A work and you're like, hey, I just want to make my fair share and I want to share, and there's an issue with you, I promise you someone else is going to want to hire you.
Yeah, and it's important to know the laws in your state. I know that October years ago, New York City did away with actually having to share your salary when you were going for a new job. And so now you don't get the question from your HR person, right, of how much were you making?
Yeah. If anybody has been asked, if you live in New York City, New York State, California, I believe there's 19 in District of Columbia. There's about 19 states in different variations of this. But you are no longer, at least in the coasts, nobody can ask your salary history. And so all you respond to, and people have been told, have had to say, by the way, that's illegal, or, there's that uncomfortable transition. But most people in California, any of the big companies in California, New York, no, they're not allowed to ask for salary history, which is why they ask for, what's your salary expectation? And this is why it's on you to do your homework. Because now it's like, okay, tell me what you want to make. And that's a hard one. And then you say, well, I've done a lot of history, but let me see how this job goes so we know what we're doing.
Exactly. And this is an interesting one. Is it common for people to negotiate vacation days? My current position, my salary is under market value. However, the PTO is amazing. And this keeps me from looking for other opportunities.
So I'm going to say this. If you're undervalued, you know it. And yes, you can negotiate more vacation days, right? If you have 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, because you're like, basically, I'm working in a way, I should be making $50 an hour. The way it was translated really ends up $25 an hour, and you get vacation days. I'm going to ask you, whoever wrote that, to start looking for another job, because you're making the assumption that you can't have a lot of vacation days and get paid. Like, I'm going to actually ask everyone who does this, you should 2 or 3 times a year, you should talk to a recruiter. 2 or 3 times a year, you should apply to jobs. You could love your job to death, but this goes back to my original point. We all have to start marching forward. Find out your market worth at that time. And if your market worth is under, you should have that conversation with your boss or supervisor and say, hey, just know, I've been doing research. I know we know it's probably undervalued. Just know it's about this much. Put it out there. Is there any way to get it closer? No. Okay, totally understand. I know this is where we are. Fine. But let the person know that you're getting underpaid. Let that be known. Yeah. And so they treat you accordingly.
When you do, they know why.
They know why. Yeah, it should never be a shock. You should always be so upfront, be where you are, of what you need. And because you're giving your whole one, this goes back, you're giving your whole day. You are literally giving your whole day to a person. And there's a minimums you need. And one of them is being paid your market worth. That is not a lot to ask for.
It's not. I love that. The next question is, when is a good time to speak with your manager when you would like a salary increase? Most people wait after a year of employment with their company. Is that usually the time frame to ask for a salary increase?
Yeah. So if you've done your work, if you did the work and you got the best you could coming in, you're going to have to wait a year. Not have to. You could do anything. There's a person, it's actually New York Times had an article about people salary sharing. We should share it. And it was for a woman who worked the riveter, right? It was like the CEO of this riveter. And a few months after they hired someone, a person came into their office, like the COO said, hey, I don't know the name, Sally, like is asking for more. And she's like, wait, didn't we just hire her? Yeah, well, she was talking to her coworker, found out that, and she wants to kind of rectify that. And I remember in the CEO, if you read it, it's really fascinating. She goes, I'm like this feminist. I create these spaces. Like I'm this person, but I was really unhappy that they were talking about salaries. Right. And it was like a shock that I was like, yeah, that is what people are going to do from now on. So be prepared. Okay. So the question was when to do it. This person did it after 3 months because they didn't, to rectify the situation. I would say a year. I would say though, say you start in December, you get your job in January, you want to set expectations of what you want the end of the year look like. Like what is success for you and me? Yeah, you're in charge. I work for you. By December, what do you need to see from me for us to have had a successful year? Because I want to do that. In 3 months from now, hey, yeah, it's March. I'm just letting you know I'm en route. What do you think? Is it going well? I think I messed up here and there. Any mental, whatever. Fine. Come up to August, come November, there should be zero doubt of what you've done. There should be no, and I think whenever anyone's surprised that they didn't get a raise, you're like, you may have to make sure you've been seen all year. So come November, October, when you want that raise, there's no shock, right? You need to make sure you wave your hand once every few months to be seen.
Absolutely. I love that. And on that note, how would you recommend an introvert prepare to request a salary increase if they're not, the ones that are like, hey, look at me, look what I've accomplished?
I love that question. I love introverts a lot. I think I'm surrounded by them because I'm not, but I'll say so you have a special need to do what you're doing. But if you think about it, what you're going to do is you're going to set a time and date, because you're not that person to be like, listen how great I am and talking in meetings. And you're like, okay, I'm not that person, but I'm going to do my work. So you still have that January conversation and you say, so I tend to not be that person who shouts and screams and stuff, but I am going to get it done. By the end of this year, what's success look like to you? And I'm going to do it for you. But it's critical for you more than anyone, if you're an introvert, to schedule 3 times a year where you're saying, how's it going? More than anyone else. Because everyone else might be shouting all the time, talking over you. You're like, hey, these are my numbers. You wanted these numbers. Are the numbers good? Are the numbers better? Come back 6 months, 3 months. Hey, this is what I'm, because I think you can have a simple script and it's not like, I think for introverts, you set up the time and you can create a space that feels comfortable to you, right? As opposed to a crazy busy meeting where lots of people, like, this is my space. I'm going to talk about this and we're going to get something done. It's very critical for you to be seen. And so that might be the best. That's one of the only ways in.
That's fantastic. I love that. Let's see. The next question is, if our start date for our new job has been delayed significantly because of COVID, is it a good idea to renegotiate our salary before we onboard or after?
That's going to be hard. You'd have to give me a reason why you need to renegotiate. So, some people just love to negotiate. I'm not saying this person is, but give me a reason. What's changed? Did you now, if anything, they'll say, well, you're not commuting as much. There's no, like they might say, actually, we may have to revisit, so if you're going to do it, like it goes both ways, have a reason to negotiate, have things changed. Do you have accelerated needs all of a sudden because of the change in whatever, but have a reason. Don't just negotiate to negotiate unless that's your MO, and that's fine. That's who you are. Tell me what happened so differently that we have to revisit with data, right?
Right. I like that. Their next question is, speaking on coworkers making more money, what if you have the experience, you've been working there for many years, but the newcomers receive a higher salary?
Yep. So no one's going to give you extra money if you don't advocate for yourself, because they see you as a safe person who's not going anywhere. That's what I tend to see, especially like nonprofits. Like so it's like, and we're going to give money to people coming in. It is okay for you to be asked to meet whole on par with your coworkers. But you're going to have to bring something to the table. Why? What are you doing? How valuable are you? Like, no one will just give you more money. Well, sometimes they do, especially if they see it and offers a trend and there's pay disparities. That's definitely a different issue. But if it's just because if you're a guy or woman and you're like, hey, wait, they're all coming in, maybe there's a critical need for them and all of a sudden they're paying more and I'm paying $10,000 more. you can have a conversation, start the conversation, say, wait, for me to get to parity, what's happening? What do I have to do? By the end of the year, I'd love to be parity. Tell me why. And if they say no, know why. Why? What am I doing differently? What's happening? And tell me, I would love to do all these things. But sometimes it might just be no. And if it's a no, take that no and make a decision on it.
Yes.
Don't sit on. Some people sit on the no and are just hurtful. They're hurt. That's not helpful. That's not paying the bills. Being hurt, like, okay, take a moment, be hurt, but then move on. They're not valuing you.
Make that decision. I love that. And last but not least, I've been searching for the past 5 months for a new job. I'm currently unemployed. Does the negotiation strategy change for someone in my situation?
Yes and no, right? So paying the bills. And I know, and I'm not going to pretend that person, you can do this. You have to do the analysis. This is what I think. If you're offered the job, no one's going to take it from you overnight. Like nothing's going to happen. Take a moment to try. If it's really undervalued, but you're like, listen, that's all I got. Anchor yourself in that job. What is the next job you want that it didn't? What are the pieces that you want next that's not there? Try and do those 3 or 4 things at that job for the year. Put that in your resume. And during that time, put that in, new job. These are the 4 bullet things that I want to focus on because that's really the job I want that's going to get me the paid. And just start trying to do those things and look for jobs for those. Like basically use this as a medium place. And it's okay to use places as a next phase place.
That's fantastic. Well, Cynthia, I want to thank you again. Can you tell us where we can find you?
Wewager.co, WEWAGERCO. At the time we can afford.com. And sign up. We have a newsletter. And actually, we give a lot of good free information in the newsletter. We're working with Youre and different people and different webinars. It's all in there. Find it, sign up. And if you need me, just say hi.
Yes. And if you have any questions, if you don't know what to do when you have negotiation coming up, reach out to Cynthia and her team. You deserve it. Know your worth and know your words. And Cynthia, thank you so much for giving us time and your energy and your insight. For all of you tuning in, we're going to be compiling an email so that you have all of Cynthia's information as well as the discount codes, and you'll receive that tomorrow.
Yay. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. It was really fun.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, everybody, for being here.